Hey BookTube, this is Friday Reads. I'm Jen and I talk about audiobooks, and I have some hits and some misses to tell you about from last week. So I will start with the misses because then we can work up to the good stuff. Yesterday I DNF'd something. I actually set it aside because the reason I couldn't go on with it was the narration, and that was Mists of the Serengeti. This is by Laylah Attar, narrated from two points of view by Musing and Zachary Weber. And okay, so many problems with this narration. I picked it up because I thought I would like the narrators, because normally I do. But the part of the problem is that this book is set in Tanzania, and it involves a man who has been raised there, who kind of is running his family's coffee plantation, and they've had it in the family for a lot of years. And so he's grown up in Tanzania and he runs this plantation. He has an 8-year-old daughter. One day he takes her to a dance recital and the building gets blown up and she dies. And the other character is a woman who is in England, and she has a sister who dies in the same bombing. So we have 2 points of view going on here in 2 countries, neither of which have anything to do with the US or Americans. Okay, let's establish that right off the bat. Because Zachary Weber is the very first narrator we hear, and he has an American accent. A guy who has lived in Tanzania his whole life and operates a coffee plantation is an American? No. Sorry, didn't work for me. No. But I could have done okay with that. But then we get Megan Tusing, who comes in and starts narrating this British woman, and that accent was so not believable to me. I'm an American, and if I can hear all the American tones in a British accent, then it's not a very good one. I mean, I'm an American and I can hear it. I can't imagine if I were British and could hear it. So that aside, she didn't do any of the other Tanzanian accents, none of the African accents, nothing. You got nothing. So I thought, I cannot listen to a book set in Tanzania with people who are native to Tanzania or England and hear them speak like this. It's like my brain couldn't reconcile the two things. So I set it aside and I thought, this is probably a good story, but no. So I returned it to Audible, and fortunately turned around and got something I'm really looking forward to, but I'll tell you about that in a minute. The other kind of fail for me this week was A Simple Favor. This is by Darcey Bell, and it's narrated from 3 points of view by Exie Sands, Andi Arndt, and Matthew Waterston. The narration in this case was stellar. It was so good. Exie Sands, I've always heard her do Kristen Higgins books, and she's always kind of a glass half full, kind of happy-go-lucky person, and in this one she was kind of evil. So that was a little bit refreshing. And Andi Arndt is always good. Matthew Waterston I had never heard before, and I really liked his narration too. He's a Brit. And so, you know, high points all around on the narration. I think that's what prompted me to give this book the rating that I did. The book, however, is a thriller slash suspense. I don't know. It's the kind of thing that I never read, but my good friend Lisa said, hey, I loved this book. It was a 5-star book for me. She reads that stuff all the time, and I thought if it's a 5-star book for someone who likes thrillers and suspense, then maybe I ought to give it a try. So I did. It's about a woman who is a blogger. She's a widow. She has a young son, and she has a best friend who lives next door with her husband. The best friend is a publicist for a big-time fashion designer, also has a young son, and her husband is a real estate mogul who is British and travels over the pond, back and forth a lot. Well, we start out with the main character, who is voiced by Andi Arndt. She's the blogger with a young son. She's a widow. She starts talking about how her friend has disappeared, and she has no idea what's happened or any, you know, she's just, what do I do? You get a lot of blog posts from this woman about her inability to cope with the situation. She's got this little boy from next door. She's watching him. She's taking care of him. It's all good, but where's the mom? And then why doesn't the dad care any more than he does? And so once he gets home, they call the police, and it seems like, why aren't these people reacting like normal people would react and calling the police straight away? And, you know, like, come on. Well, it goes from there into kind of what I think were supposed to be some darker areas, but I'd heard it all before. It's like, and I don't even read this stuff. So you got, you know, this evil woman who is, you know, dead, and yet then you get plot twists thrown in, and you've got this guy who is kind of a dish rag, kind of a guy. Yeah. And then you've got this mommy blogger who apparently had some horrible things in her past, but I could not find what kind of a bearing they had on the story. It was like, okay, well, I don't know what that was supposed to add. You know, no. So I ended up giving this book 2 stars, and I asked Lisa about this later. I said, why? What possessed you to give this 5 stars? And she said, you know, sometimes a book just hits you at the right time, in the right way. And I thought, that is so true, because I think there are books that I have given 5 stars that probably nobody else would. And it has a lot to do with your emotional reaction and where you are at the time that you read it, like what frame of mind you're in, what's going on around you, what's going on in your life, you know, things like that. 2 stars. It's kind of a fail. I finished The Pastor's Wife last night, and that's by Jennifer AlLee. It is narrated by Lisa Cordileone, and I love the narration. I love Lisa Cordileone. Her narration always is a pleasure to listen to. She's just really good. She is. She's really good at comedy and a little bit of sarcasm, a little bit of just a lightheartedness that she puts into the books that she narrates. That's not to say that she can't be serious, because she can and is and was in this book. But overall, she's just pleasant. She's just really pleasant to listen to. I always enjoy her narration. So on that front, it was very good. The story is about a woman who was a pastor's wife, or she is a pastor's wife. She is not married for very long, less than a year, to her husband, and they are young, new to ministry. He is a senior, well, he's an associate, and then he kind of falls into a senior ministry position in a church, and she leaves him because he's married to the church and not to her. I mean, he is married to her, but you know what I mean? He cannot, he's a workaholic. He cannot separate his, or prioritize his marriage in the context of his work or his ministry or his life, or call it whatever you want, but you know, it comes first. She comes second across the board. And I've been in that situation, and fortunately my situation has resolved very positively, and this one does too, because it's a romance. I mean, it's a Christian romance. Come on, like what? There's not going to be a happy ending? Of course there is. Well, the other issue is that this woman has essentially lost her faith, and that's a big deal. That's kind of a big, major deal. So they've been separated for 6 years, and there is a woman in the church who dies. So she makes it a condition of her will that some things happen. And so they both come to the reading of the will and find this out, and they're, you know, they've had no contact. And so it's all about the story of them having to come together to fulfill the conditions of the will so that everybody will benefit. And it, of course, ends on a very high note, you know. My problem with this is that those 2 issues, the ministry always coming first, that's a huge thing that breaks up marriages in the ministry these days. And the other thing is this woman's loss of faith. Like, that is no small thing. And so those things don't fit into this genre, into this category of lighthearted, sweet romance. So I ended up giving this 3 stars. I think it's more like 2.5 rounded up for exactly those reasons. Okay. Now we get to the good part. And the first of those was Pandemic. This is by A.G. Riddle. It's book 1 in the Extinction files, and it was narrated brilliantly, seriously, so brilliantly, by Edoardo Ballerini. This guy was so good. Made this book such a pleasure to listen to. Oh my gosh, I was so impressed. Accents all over the place, great tone that he gave to the story, great feelings of urgency where it was appropriate, and just a real emotional kind of, I don't know, the emotion he injected into the story was, God, it was so good. Best narrator I've heard in a long time. And the story is not bad either. This is about a pandemic. It's about a flu virus that gets loose and all the people that have to go treat it and nail down the original carrier, like the original person from whom it originated. I'm so good at using so many words for so many things, aren't I? They give you a lot of scientific terms about that and the way it works, and it is a literal pandemic that kills millions of people in the world. And in trying to get to the bottom of it, you have a lot of very precarious situations where people could get infected or maybe are infected. Are they going to recover? Are they not? How do they find a cure? And then we get into some conspiracy territory by the end of the book. And so it was so good. I really, really liked it. And I ended up giving that one 4 stars and then immediately picking up the sequel. It's a duology, and the sequel is Genome. And again, same author, same narrator, book 2, and it was even better because it expanded the whole idea of this pandemic, and it took it as one element of a conspiracy, and then it kind of just built on that and went all kinds of places, and you had all kinds of stuff going on. You had, you know, bad guys and good guys and shootouts and car chases and all kinds of stuff, and it kind of culminated in something that I thought was a really cool idea. I know some people on Goodreads didn't like it very much, but I thought it was really cool. I really did. I thought if you're going to go there with this idea, then that was a good place to go. So I gave that one 5 stars. I really liked it. And that's a end of the world post-apocalyptic book that I think I can recommend. It was really good. I really liked it. And then I picked up The Shape of Water. This is by Guillermo del Toro and Daniel Kraus, and it is narrated by Jenna Lamia. Okay, well, right there. Oscar-winning movie by Guillermo del Toro and Jenna Lamia. Okay, yes. Yes, please give me all of that. Give me lots of that. Give me more of that. Oh my gosh. I have not seen the movie, and now I can't wait to. This book was just beautiful in the way it was written. Oh, just beautiful. The way that, just the prose, the way that feelings were expressed and situations were expressed, and the kind of observations about the human condition, just all of it. Oh, it was so good. Jenna Lamia is, that woman. That woman could narrate the tax code, and I would listen to it. She's my absolute favorite narrator, I think, of all time. But she did a lot of different distinct characterizations of the individual characters in the book, including the monster. You know, he's not really a monster, but he's the asset, let's call it that, because that's what they call it in the book. It's set in 1962, so it has a very Mad Men kind of ambiance, and I loved it. I loved it. It was basically about disenfranchised people and all of the implications of that, all the way that that played out in the 60s, and all the ways that it extended into people groups that you didn't really expect. And oh my gosh, it was so good. Also about a man's slow descent into madness, and that was equally as good. So, oh my gosh, 5 stars all the way around. It was, I got finished with that and I thought, now what am I going to read? What could possibly compare to that? So that was last week. This week I picked up Mars One by Jonathan Mayberry. It is narrated on audio by McLeod Andrews. It just came out, and my friend Karen, who knows that I love sci-fi, and she knows a good sci-fi book when she reads one, So she texted me and said, hey, it's out, you got to read it. And I've not read anything from Jonathan Mayberry, mainly because he does zombie books that are really gory and bloody, and you know, I'm not into all that blood and gore. But I don't know, I may have to give him a try. I'm really excited about this. Karen phrased it as Apollo 13 meets Mark Watney in The Martian. So apparently it's about a family, and more specifically, it's a YA book. It's about a young guy who has been training his whole life to go to Mars. And so how that plays out and what happens. And so, well, Claude Andrews, I mean, what else do I have to say? Claude Andrews, it's going to be fantastic. And it's Jonathan Mayberry, and he was a really fun guy when I met him in Tucson at the book festival where I went. And so, yeah, I'm looking forward to that one. I haven't gotten into it yet at all. I mean, I just put it on the iPhone, so I'm getting ready to listen. The other thing I'm listening to is Down to My Soul, which is book 2 in the Soul series by Kennedy Ryan. And I'm having trouble with this because it's the second book in a series that I started. I finished it, I think, last week. It's narrated by Kai Kennicott and Wen Ross. And I'm having trouble with Wen Ross's narration. He's just wrong for this character, but I want to find out how it resolves. So I guess, you know, I could just put it aside and read it, but I don't want to do that. I just think that's okay. I'll listen to it on 2-speed, and I'll, you know, skip through the really racy parts, and I'll get the gist of the story, and then I will know what happens. So that was last week, and the weekend coming up for me. I'd love to know what you're reading. So let me know. Let's talk about that in comments. And that's it for now for me. Have a great weekend, and I will see you next time. Thanks for watching.